Hello everybody, and thanks for taking the time to review the Almaden Valley, California real estate market analysis for January of 2009. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I am a licensed real estate broker in the state of California. I'm also a member of the National Association of Realtors and a certified ePro, and also the president and CEO of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services, who is sponsoring this presentation. Now let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at the performance numbers for Almaden Valley for January of 2009, and we'll look first at the inventory numbers. This is the same sort of trend we've been seeing. Inventory numbers are not doing great. We've seen a pretty dramatic increase, though, here in Almaden Valley. That's a little bit uncharacteristic. Almaden's been a little bit more resilient to the market effects that we've seen lately. In fact, between 2007 and 2008, we actually saw an overall decrease in inventory for Almaden Valley, where most other communities were continuing to see increasing inventory. Well, things seem to have finally turned a corner here in Almaden, and we are seeing a dramatic increase in inventory. In fact, it's up 51.61% in January of 2009. So if we look going back to January of 2008, compared to January of 2009, we have 51.61% more homes on the market. That's 32 more homes currently for sale in Almaden Valley in 2009 than in 2008. That gives us a grand total of 94 homes currently on the market in Almaden Valley. Now, if we take a look at the number of homes that were listed in the month of January, we can see a big increase there as well. In fact, it's a dramatic increase. We haven't seen an increase on this level in quite some time in Almaden Valley. It's increased 44.83%. That's 13 more homes listed in the month of January of 2009 than in the same month last year. That gives us a grand total of 42 homes that were listed in the month of January of 2009. Now, sales is the real killer for this month's numbers. It's dramatically low. In fact, it's the lowest it's ever been in a January going all the way back to 1999. We sold only 5 homes in Almaden Valley, and when you find out the type of homes that were sold, I think you're going to be surprised. Sales are actually down 50% from last year when we sold 10. That's obviously a decrease of 5 homes, so 5 fewer homes were sold in January of 2009 than in January of 2008. Now, as I like to do, I like to take the inventory number and divide it by the total number of homes sold, and that gives us two things. It gives us a little perspective into how long it would take us to sell off all the inventory we currently have given the current sales numbers. And when we do that, we discover that number comes to 18.8, so that means it would take us 18.8 months to sell off every home currently in inventory in Almaden Valley if sales numbers stayed right where they are. That is very bad news, particularly considering that last month that number for Almaden Valley stood at 5.12. And now another way of thinking of this is sort of a competition number. So if you're a person trying to get your home sold, for every home that sells, there are about 18 other homes trying to get sold. That is a lot of competition for very few numbers of buyers out there, at least the way the numbers worked out for January of 2009. Now, what's worse is the county number for this. The county ratio was 8.4. So that means Almaden Valley is dramatically underperforming the county in general when it comes to these types of numbers, which is a little bit unusual. As I've said, Almaden Valley has proven to be a fairly resilient community all through this downturn. So what we're seeing now are some of the first big indicators that Almaden may be hard hit, or maybe starting to be more hard hit by some of these market changes that have been taking effect. Now, I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in 1 month's worth of data. Remember, we're not talking about huge numbers here as far as the sample. 5 homes sold, 10 homes sold last month. Only 94 homes are currently in the market. So because we're dealing with a smaller sample, you usually don't want to start thinking a trend is occurring until you've seen it happening for 3 months. Usually on the quarter, I'll take a look at these numbers and see what sort of trends are indicated by that, because you get a bigger sample and it gives you a better indication of where things are going. Now let's take a look at the same numbers, but just going straight back now chronologically by months, so that we can get an idea of what trends we're seeing that might be different from last year and what we might project is going to happen based on how things went last year. Now, of course, this obviously is just going back to September of 2007. We're not just looking at the month of January anymore, and we're looking at the inventory numbers. And the general line that's being drawn there, the trend line, shows that things are obviously increasing over the period that we're looking at here. The peaks and the valleys are really the seasonal changes that are normal for any market. So you can see that December is the low point. That's fairly normal. Winter is when we see things drop. Usually it's either December or January that we see those big dips happening. Also remember that just there are humans behind these numbers. So the decisions that affect how these numbers look get made by the sellers that are out there and by buyers that are out there buying. Sellers off, if they have the option or if they're not under a lot of stress to get their property sold, will usually take their home off of the market for the winter months, at the very least for November and December, to allow the family to enjoy the home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we'll usually see fewer listings and homes going off of the market during those times and then coming back on the market in January. Now, because we're in sort of an evolving market where there's a lot more short sales and foreclosures, where selling isn't really just something you're thinking about doing, but something that has to happen, we are starting to see now fewer homes being taken off of the market because folks aren't in the houses that are being sold. There are so many foreclosures out there. Foreclosures are vacant. Banks don't take properties off of the market for holidays. So a lot of those properties never get taken off of the market because it just doesn't, there's no reason for them to. There's no human beings in the house that would like to have the holiday seasons just for the family without trying to get a home sold. So what do we see from here? We see the same basic trends. Last year we saw December as the lowest point. We see that same thing happening this year. What's interesting is we're seeing more or less the same numeric change. Obviously, if you were to do it as a percentage of each thing, that would be a little bit different. But just numerically, they look very similar as far as how much change is occurring, which is unusual when compared to other parts of the county, because this year what we saw was a much milder change from December to January. We still saw a little bit of an increase in inventory numbers, but not as dramatic as previous years, because so many of the properties were made up of foreclosures, and that it really kept the listings that occurred in January from being as big as they have been historically when compared to the previous month. So while we've got a lot of bad news here, I actually think that's fairly good news for Almaden Valley, because it shows that foreclosures are not dominating quite as much as it is in some other areas. All right, so obviously here, what's the trend we're seeing? We're seeing a trend in increased inventory. That's not great news. We would like to see that inventory number as low as possible, but look at where that inventory really took off. It was really as we exited the winter months of 2008 and hit the summer season. We saw a pretty good drop, but we just didn't meet the same level of drop-off that we saw last year as more properties stayed on the market. My guess would be a lot of the reasons why more properties stayed on the market this year, though, would be because of foreclosures. Just because they're dominating the markets in so many parts of Santa Clara County. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the homes that were listed in the month of January in Almaden. We can see here it's a big increase. January of last year, yes, there was an increase from December to January in listings. That's fairly normal for that season. But that was about twice as many. Between December and January 2007 and 2008, we saw, December and January 2007 to 2008, we saw about double the number of homes listed in January than in December. This year, it's more on par with being 3 times the number of homes listed in January than in December. In fact, from December to January, we saw a 14.63% increase. That's 12 more homes listed. 180% increase. That's 27 more homes listed in the month of January than the month of December. Now, for the inventory numbers, that was actually just a 14.63% increase. So 12 more homes on the market in January of 2009 than December of 2008. And if we look at the sales numbers, the most depressing part really of the performance we've seen in Almaden, sales are down 68.75%. That's 11 fewer homes sold in January than in December. It's as if things just ground to a halt. This may just be a 1 month blip. We'll have to wait and see. Like I said, I like to wait and get data for 3 months to give us an idea of where we stand. And it's obviously these very low sales that have got our ratio so screwed up, where we've got 18 plus months worth of inventory. So we'll see how things pan out in February, but January sure isn't bringing 2009 through the door with any really good news for Almaden Valley. You can see the trend there. Sales numbers are trending down. It's not a dramatic slope, but it is a slope nonetheless. And when you see the yellow bar sloping down and the green bar and the blue bar both sloping up, that is dramatically bad news for Almaden Valley, considering that means we get more and more homes in the inventory, more and more homes trying to get sold. and no increase in sales to really meet that supply of homes. So that's a recipe for much lower prices in Almaden Valley, and buyers just not being willing to pay some of the prices that sellers are going to want for various homes. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the home prices over past years. Again, this is just the month of January, going back to 1999. We can see a very dramatic change between 2008 and 2009. Now you'll notice Almaden enjoyed a actual increase between 2007 and 2008. That was relatively unique. There were a few communities that enjoyed that kind of position while the market's been going down. Now remember, we've been gradually dealing with this new market ever since 2006. While some of the biggest, baddest news happened in the late part of 2008, the bad news has been going on for real estate now for a few years. And Almaden Valley has been relatively resilient and not having to face some of these issues that other communities have had to face. Now, the average home price, given these numbers, now remember, we are talking about a relatively small sample, and again, we'll want to see what the quarter numbers are for the first part of this year. But as it stands now, home prices are down 29.53%. That's a $354,500 decline from January of 2008 to January of 2009. Now, the average home price was $846,000. Let's go ahead and take a look at the median, because that's usually a pretty informative tool here. Now, what the median price was $760,000. So that means that half of the homes that sold were priced above $760,000, and half the homes that sold were priced below $760,000. Normally, you'd want to see the median and the average right around the same place. That usually means that your average is actually a pretty good average. In this case, it shows that much more attention, not much more, but more attention is being paid to the homes, or there was a heavier weighting of homes at prices below the average than above it. And actually, the median price was down 35.86% from the same time last year. That's a dollar change of $425,000. So how does some of this pan out? I usually like to point out the highest and lowest ends on this particular scale. So the highest priced single-family residential home in Almaden Valley sold on 21294 Cinnabar Hills Road. That home sold for $1,325,000. It was originally listed for $2,590,000. So that was a substantial drop. About $1.2 million had to be taken off of the asking price of that home to ultimately get it sold. It took them 315 days to get that home sold. That's actually a property I viewed, a very nice home, but the market just isn't letting the homes go for those kinds of prices right now. Now, the lowest priced single-family residential home in Almaden Valley was at 6208 Flowering Plum Road. It sold for $625,000, and it was originally listed for $665,000, and that property was on the market for 156 days. So note that even at that price point, it took well over 150 days for that property to actually get sold. Now, the average price per square foot this month was $341.08. Last month's average price per square foot, wow, $425.29. So a substantial drop in that amount for this month's numbers. Let's go ahead now and look at the home prices just over past months. Can we see any trends from this that we can get any good info from? Well, in general, like we've always done, is we use this sort of the sit back and get an idea of where things are going. Again, the sample size is too small to really try and get trends just from a month-to-month comparison. But you can see that obviously the trend is downward pretty substantially. There's really no doubt about it. If folks want to get their homes sold, they really need to aggressively market their homes and be intelligently pricing them. One thing I always suggest to people who are considering putting their homes on the market is they need to put on the hat of a buyer. There are so many choices out there that when you're someone trying to sell your home, you need to have your agent for a few minutes treat you as if you're a buyer shopping for a house. You need to know who your competition is, what they're priced at, and what amenities they're offering at the price point they're trying to sell their home at. If you're not coming close to some of the amenities and other things available in the home that's competing against yours, but you're at the same price, you need to seriously adjust your price, because it's only the best of show at any price point that's really getting sold right now. So you need to keep that in mind. Now, if we take a look at the median, I didn't run an average for the median because median is really only informative for really the month that it's in compared to the average price. You can see that Last month was really very balanced between the average price and the median, and then we've seen other months where obviously the grouping of homes that were selling were way below what the average was. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the number of days it has taken to get homes sold. Going back now to 1999, and you'll notice on this particular chart I have a modified 2009 column as well. Let me explain why that's there. We had one home that sold after 315 days, and it was so far above everything else. I mean, the next closest was 160 days, that it really threw this number off and put it way up there. And I wanted to give you more of a realistic expectation if you're a seller out there who's considering putting your home on the market. By throwing up a number that's just going to make you panic, I'm not helping you, and it's not really telling you the truth about what these numbers really mean. As you can see, I've got both numbers. 156 days is what it would have been without that highest house. 116 without it. The number of homes that let's see this. So, and then here's sort of the change. You can see that in 2008, 2007, homes were selling. Homes were moving relatively quickly. 33 days in January of 2008, 55 days in January of 2007. Almaden was seeing homes that came on the market selling relatively quickly. Last year we saw things dramatically increase. We've actually seen, in 2009 we saw things dramatically increase. It was actually a 372.73% increase. That's 123 more days to get a home sold in 2009 than in 2008. But on the bottom line here is I don't want anyone to take this as a number, as a solid number, and say, oh well, now I'm screwed now because here's how long it would take me to get my house sold. The reality is that it's not, the bad news isn't as bad as that. If you were to put your home in the market right now in Almaden Valley, you had it properly marketed, all the right marketing things were put in place right at the moment that home hit the multiple listing service, I think the real number is about 90 to 100 days for Almaden Valley for you to get your home sold. If I was listing your home, I think that's the number I would calibrate you to as the worst case scenario. There's plenty of examples of agents out there who aren't doing it right, and that seems to contribute to why these homes stay on the market so long. So it's very important that you pick agents that are really doing the job right before you commit to them, so that you can achieve the goals you're shooting for. All right, now let's break it down a little bit more. I like to give you a sort of an overview of the chunks of time we're talking about. Now, no homes were sold before they were put onto the MLS. Sometimes you'll see homes sell so quickly that the agents will put them on the MLS even though they already have an offer in their hands. None of that happened in Almaden Valley in January of 2009. Homes that were on the market for 1 to 7 days that sold, 0. We didn't have any homes sell in the first week. 1 home sold in 8 to 30 days. 0 homes sold in 31 to 90 days. 3 homes sold in 90 to 180 days. And 1 home sold in over 180 days. And 20% of the homes sold in 30 days or less. Last month, 25% of homes sold in 30 days or less. And I'll tell you, just to sort of calibrate you the way real estate agents approach this, I know that when I go into a listing, I work on a 14-day cycle, sometimes shorter depending on the market. But if I don't have an offer or haven't had tons of people walking through the house within the first, and it's different depending on where you are in the listing process, but within the first week to 2 weeks, if I haven't seen that happen, I do a dramatic reevaluation of how I'm marketing the property. So every cycle of about 2 weeks to 14 days, a week to 14 days for that first 2 weeks. Is different. I'm usually a little tighter in that first week, but once we've gone through that first week, about every 14 days after that, I'll be reevaluating the house's marketing, how it's being presented, its curb appeal, everything about it, to jump through those hoops again to try to get an effective marketing strategy going. The bottom line is my rule of thumb is any house I list, my plan is to sell it before 30 days are up. So you need to have an agent who has that kind of an aggressive attitude towards their listings. While I can point to these numbers and say this is how long it's taking on average for here and there to sell. My goal is to always beat whatever the average is. I don't care what the market's like. If you have taken my advice on price and you've taken my advice on staging the property, the rest of it really is in my hands as far as getting the thing marketed correctly. And if I do it right, if everything has gone the way I've suggested it should, then it's really hard to argue why a house should stay on the market for more than 30 days. because that's really why the agents are involved in the process. It's to give you that educated information, and if you're listing it at what they say you should list it at, it should sell. That's really the bottom line. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at the days to sell just in past months now. We'll see if we can spot any trends here. We can see obviously there's just been an overall increase over the time period that we're looking at here. We actually had a 50.65% increase in the days to sell between December and January. That's a 39-day increase. And the number I used here for January of 2009 was my modified number, not the straight number if you leave in everything. This is what we get if we leave out the number that just really skewed the whole thing. Now, also as for more added information, this is the one I alluded to, the foreclosures slide that I added to the presentation last month, which we see here again. Now, we only had 5 homes sell, so none of this is anything that should be scaring anybody into thinking we're in deep trouble here, but we had 1 home that was a short sale, 1 home that was a conventional sale, and 3 homes that were foreclosures in Almaden Valley. So that gives us foreclosures accounting for 60% of the homes that sold, short sales accounting for 20%, and conventionals accounting for 20%. Again, I'd want to probably emphasize to folks that, we've got 2 groups that are potentially listening, right? We've got sellers, and this could have some sellers freaking out, picking up phones, calling people, panic, running through the streets. Don't let this particular set of data throw you. We've been talking for months about the market in Almaden Valley. This is definitely not a good month for Almaden Valley, but I don't know if it's indicative of a trend. I doubt it. There's just not enough happening similar to this in other parts of the county for me to get too uptight about this, but we'll definitely want to keep an eye on it and see how things pan out, and then we'll want to take a look at the quarterly numbers and see how that works for us. And for those of you that are buyers, if this is saying anything to you, it should be saying get off your lounger, get in the car, and head over to Almaden Valley and start looking for some homes. Almaden Valley is on my short list of homes that are a short list of communities that is a great place to live. Almaden Valley is fantastic. I'm a big fan of Almaden Valley. There's a lot of variety there. If you're someone who loves older homes with lots of land, or tighter suburban neighborhoods where homes tend to be much more closer together, Almaden Valley has all of that. It's got great ranch-style living. It's got horse properties. It's got great tight little neighborhoods. It's got good schools. It's got new construction. It's got old homes. If you want to find yourself a 70s classic with green shag, you can find it in Almaden. And if you want the most modern of modern, you can find it in Almaden as well. So there's a lot of things out there that appeal to, I think, everybody. And Almaden should be one of at the top of your list of places to live. Not just for those reasons, but also because it's so centrally located to the South Valley. Easy commutes to just about everywhere. Granted, the deeper you get into Almaden Valley, you've got to contend with one real main route to get out through Almaden Expressway, but I think that what Almaden Valley has to offer far outweighs any concerns in that area. So if you're interested in Almaden Valley, give me a call. I've got a great search tool up for all the Almaden Valley properties up right now on my website. Feel free to go take a look at that and check it out. But I'm a big fan. I lived in Almaden Valley when I first started elementary school when I was a little guy, and I'm a big fan of the community. So go check it out. All right, now let's go ahead and just give you a big overview of where these properties were located. Obviously not a whole lot of them. The number 1 property address apparently couldn't be found by the system, but that's where 4 of the properties were located that sold. Pretty much randomly thrown through Almaden Valley. No big trends that we see here geographically. Now, I do appreciate y'all coming out and listening to what I have to say on these subjects. If you'd like to go look at any of my other video presentations relating to market analysis, feel free to find those at my website. You can also find my weekly podcast and also articles I've written relating to real estate there at www.soldbyrobert.com. If you'd like to get in touch with me via email, feel free to send any inquiries to robert@soldbyrobert.com. Or if you'd like to give me a call, talk about real estate, discuss anything, I'd be happy to chat with you. Feel free to dial me up at 408-852-0525. If you're someone who prefers online chatting, you can get me through AOL Instant Messenger, Google Talk, and Yahoo IM at the screen name The Rebel Broker. And if you're a Skype user, find me with the screen name Rebel Broker. And of course, referrals are always appreciated. If you or anyone you know is interested in real estate in Silicon Valley, please feel free to give me a call using any of the methods noted above. I'd be happy to help out. And finally, if you are someone who's interested in real estate even outside of Silicon Valley, maybe it's Maine, maybe it's Oregon, maybe it's Florida, give me a call and I can jump through the hoops to find you the perfect agent for your exact needs. In fact, I've already got a pretty long list of agents scattered all across the country already who are great at what they do and take the job as seriously as I do myself. So that's it. I appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to y'all next time.